Hi guys, I'm checking back in. It is Thursday, September 17th, a day before our baby girl's birthday. September 18th, she turns 30. Gosh, y'all. Well, if you've gone through and read the various poetry that I posted and then went on to share, how our whole family came to be, you probably understand who everybody is at this point. If not, well, anyways, Olivia Nicole Johnson is her name. Okay, so she'll be 30. I think I mentioned that. All right. I'm going to just touch a tiny bit on what a refreshing couple of days we had away. Okay. I cannot stress enough. You have got to get out of your environment during this pandemic. Someplace, somewhere, somehow. What was very interesting, and I like to observe how I'm feeling about stuff, and there's a reason I'm going to get into that. The two topics I'm going to talk about today, emotional intelligence topics. But I like to observe, and I noted the day that we got back, and I think I had mentioned in another video, I'd been, for the first time, really felt like the pandemic was hitting me head on. Okay? But the day we got back, it was like a switch went on me. It's like all the realities of everything we had to accomplish, everything we had to take care of, all the communications we had to handle, Roy getting back to his schoolwork, a sick pop. It's just like everything went, woo, and usually, I'm like, okay, one thing at a time. Choo, choo, choo. Okay. But the contrast, I believe, is what hit me. We were away at Rock Island with my sister and brother-in-law. And we just love being with them, love them to death. It just was so easy. And, you need these relationships in your life. You laugh together, you play together, you commiserate, you complain. It doesn't matter because you're okay with each other, and, we share responsibilities when we're together. It's just such what a healthy relationship should be, Anyways, just so calm and still. That's the thing we kept saying over. So still here. Go where it's still. We're getting drowned out by a lot of messages and voices. How are you going to really know, how you stand, how you feel about things until you're still? That wasn't my goal when I went there, but, it always happens when you're still. So, like I said, I shared the contrast of coming back, and I caught myself. I expressed that right away because I wanted to negate that. I wanted to challenge that thought process, like what's going on, Mary? What's happening here? So that I would not be, destructive at all in my communications with anyone. That's always my goal. I don't want to be destructive in any way. So, anyways, he was awesome. I told hubby, I said, I'm still having issues, because of my Addison's and my PTSD, complex PTSD, how it kind of came to a head over the last couple of weeks. I got a little break from it. It was like I got this little reprieve, and all of a sudden I walked through the door, and it just hit me. I mean, I love my home. I love him. I love our pets, but it's just, those responsibilities, and I wasn't quite ready to navigate them, and I probably shouldn't have headed full first into them. I probably should have just crawled up in the bed and read a little book or did something, like, okay, everything will still be there in another couple hours, but I got right into it, Just pay attention to yourself, it's better for yourself and others when you do, but he's just kind of stepped up the last 2 or 3 days, even more than usual, allowing me to kind of like ease back in and, and he sleeps a lot better than me too. He's quite aware of that. Anyways, that's enough on that. But like I said, highly recommend it. It's gorgeous there. Okay, so that's that. I'm going to tell you another thing. All right, we're out walking our babies just now, Oh, God. We just made the best choice with this Beanie Girl. I can't say enough about it. But anyways, this lady's walking up, which I thought was her pup. Okay. She's always scowling, kind of. I'm like, oh, crap. I said, Roy, because sometimes he walks. I go, she usually scowl at you too, So I said, I wonder what's going on with her. So we came back around, ran into her. The dog that she's walking, turns out she's pet sitting, and she lives in this place, and she's got, anyways, I'll get into it. She's got the signs up. But anyways, Ringo, even though it was a male, they were about the same size, and they wanted to play. It was so heartening to see, because Ringo doesn't usually like to play with other dogs. So there's kind of like this little thing they do with each other when dogs like each other and want to play, Mary, slow down. Okay, so turns out, I said, are those your signs there? Okay. And I know a lot of my loved ones are not Biden-Harris supporters, you know. And I says, oh my gosh. She goes, are those that your sign down there? I go, yeah. She goes, well, we kind of outnumbered, aren't we? Yeah. I says, well, we're really Bernie fans, I said, but, you know, this two-party system is so corrupt, we just got to go with the lesser of the two evils, you know. And, you know, my whole focus, y'all, it's not politics. Is to ease suffering. And I've said that over and over. And if I don't believe you're going to ease suffering, I'm not going to support you. I don't care who you are. You know, what else you say you're going to do? If you're not interested in easing suffering, every candidate I write to, I contact, I say, what's your stance on children in cages? If I don't hear back from them, you've lost me. I don't care if some staffer goes, you know, what's your stance? I want to know what you're going to do if I support you as a congressional candidate. Blah, 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 blah. You know, I even wrote Mitt Romney because I was so impressed how he stood up, you know, about the illegality, you know, during the impeachment hearing thing. But he never wrote me back. He didn't even have a staffer write me back. And I spent a lot of time on that. So I'm like, ah. Okay. I had to explain the whole scenario, you know, and where I stood. Anyways, you know, I got to put a drop in my eye. 1 second, please. I'm back. Okay, anyways, that's the end of that. I hope I haven't lost what I was going to do. I can get back to it. Anyways, what I'm going to what happened is that when I closed my computer turned off, just as well. What I'm going to talk about today, well, is booting up cognitive distortions. Okay, I brought it up in a couple of videos. I wish I had a little interactive here. I'd love to hear what y'all think about, you know, some of these terms and how you think they might apply, okay? I'm probably, because I kind of went on longer than I thought I was going to go about other, you know, extemporaneous issues. I'm just going to talk about cognitive distortions. The other topic I was going to go into more depth about was the 3 forms of communication. And I have mentioned them prior, you know, but it might help you when we delve more deeply into them to recognize, you know, where you're at that particular time and how you're communicating with your loved ones, okay? Or even ones that you don't love so much, okay? We're going to get into that more. And, you know, how you can get more competent in that type of communication, you know, so you don't feel like a duck out of water, as they like to say. Everything is practice. Everything is doing. It's like anything. It just has to be consistent. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, I think I got this. I think I got this. Repetition. You know, just like Livy said about Aaliyah. She's getting this rounding thing. I go, you know, some students need a lot of repetition. And all of a sudden, you know, I'm a former tutor, so I know that. I know some kids need that. Just don't worry. Don't stress. It'll happen. If it don't happen, go with the help they need. Or, you know, if they have a learning disability or whatever, you figure out what, you know, intervention is needed. Do an IEP plan, you know. But you go to bat for that child. Okay. I'm going to tell you cognitive distortions, and if you're familiar, I got to turn my mouse on because I got my desktop in this. There we go. Good job, Mary. Cognitive distortions, which you may already be aware of, they're faulty ways of thinking. Now, initially, when you have a cognitive distortion, it could be because you're in a survival stance, and you know, there's a crisis that came about, and so you know your thought pattern, you know, just came right up, you know, it's some kind of, you know, cognitive means thinking, which, you know, I don't want to talk down to anybody, but, you know, maybe a couple people not, oh, wait a minute, what's that cognitive stuff all about? So anyways, they're thinking patterns. Cognitive distortions are thinking patterns, which can be habitual. And the problem, when you hear distortion, you often think, oh, it's not quite right then, right? Like somebody distorted the truth. You heard that phrase before? Okay, exaggerated, distorted. Okay, there's basically 10 forms of cognitive distortions. And, you know, because I'm older now, I kind of brought them up, you know, on the, there's, okay, the thought origins. That's like when I said you initially get that thought, okay? And there's several, like I said, there's 10, basically 10. The first one is polarized thinking, and we'll talk about that a little bit. That's when people think in extremes. When you think about that, people are really polarized. Whoop, whoop, okay? You're convinced you're either going to succeed You're destined to success or doomed to failure. Nothing in between, black or white. Okay? You don't have that gray area. When you have that kind of distorted thinking, if you don't succeed, you're going to feel like a failure. And if you already feel like a failure, you already told yourself you're a failure, you're not going to try to succeed. You see the trouble with that? Okay? And, they always say, go back and look at all the people, like how many times, I think Ben Franklin, all these, they got all these backgrounds on people who, batted out a million times and all of a sudden they had a home run and then they were in the, big leagues. Or, you hear this stuff constantly. Okay? When I dropped out of school and I had 94 credits, I believe it was 94 credits, I knew I was going to succeed one day. It just wasn't my time, And I accepted it and I started dealing and getting my emotional healing underway, so that I could take on the responsibilities. I could be focused better. All right. Okay, make sure I cover that good. Overgeneralization. Okay. That's making a conclusion about an event and then applying that across the board. Okay? Like something happened that way. Like they give this example. You make a low score on a math test. Okay? Okay. You're hopeless at math. That's it. You're hopeless at math. It's just overgeneralizing, when people say always or never, that should be in there. I'm not reading any of this. That's what usually happens. Always or never. Like, for instance, you have a negative experience in a relationship, you just aren't going to be good at relationships at all. How many of us that have gone through divorces? Like, I remember telling my friend Debbie McManus, I don't think this is going to happen for me. I think I'm just going to close that door. Which, by the way, I already picked out a song that I thought would fit that, fit that for both Roy and me. I know you're looking forward to that. I know I said it. I meant it. What you going to do about it? Okay. Catastrophizing is thinking of the worst possible outcome. Okay. And that can be very habitual. Every time something happens. Okay. Let's say the da-da-da. For instance, an expected check doesn't arrive in the mail. A person who catastrophizes may begin to fear it will never arrive. They won't be able to pay the rent and their family will be evicted. But if this becomes a habit, you can see you don't trust the universe, you don't trust yourself, you don't have trust in others. Personalizations. Wow. This is kind of like when you think somebody like is intentionally trying to hurt you or exclude you, and it really had nothing to do with you, that's called personalization. And this really happens a lot with people with depression or anxiety, and it keeps them stuck. And it kind of, social phobia, you think everybody's looking at you and you're just uncomfortable in settings, so you just don't even try. Okay. And exposure therapy works really well for that. I meant to say at the beginning, for all of these cognitive distortions, CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy is usually very productive. I know some people say it hasn't worked for them. It usually does. Cognitive behavioral, connecting your thoughts with your behavior for a more positive outcome. Okay, catastrophizing. We did personalization, mind reading. When you think you know what other when you think you know what other people are thinking. Oh God, there's empathy, which you can, try to empathize with others and, imagine what they're going through so you can walk, feel like you can walk in their shoes and walk alongside of them and support them. That's different than knowing what they're thinking. We can never truly know that, you got to look at the evidence. You can't just go by, your suspicions and beliefs, right? Okay. Mind reading is more common among children, and it's associated with high anxiety, because the way they're treated is they think that's how people feel about them, and they think that's what the world is. If they're treated, mistreated, they think the world is unsafe. Okay. And of course, then that leads to personalization. See how they can kind of overlap with each other? Another negative, distorted thought pattern is to ignore positives and only focus on the negatives. We've all know what this is like. And that increases anxiety and depression, y'all. If you have a negative perspective of yourself and your future, you can start to feel hopeless. I gotta turn the fan off. It was like I was super hot when I walked in here, and then all of a sudden I started getting chilly willy. Okay. Now, you start to see everything through a filter, a negative filter. And then you discount the positive, which is another just cognitive distortions. You're biased, negative biased in your thinking. Instead of thinking that, you're going to have a good outcome because you've earned that, you have a good skill, you make smart choices. You think it's still not going to work out. There's still going to be you just can't win. You just can't win. The world's kind of stacked up against you. When you feel that you have no control over your circumstances, it reduces motivation and it cultivates a sense of learned helplessness. Whew. Boy, some of this stuff could really happen easily today. It's should statements. And I mentioned this in another video. I don't like to say, well, you should be doing this, or you ought to be doing this, or you should. You shouldn't say that about yourself either. Did you hear that? You shouldn't. Okay, so that, that's judgment. You're either doing judgment on yourself, or you're doing judgment on others. I should have done that. I should handle that better. Not happy with that at all. Okay, learn from it. Grow from it. Every time I have an experience that's either have a negative outcome or a positive outcome, I incorporate that into my schema, 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 my life schema, how I want my life to be, the quality of my life, how I visualize my life story, how I see my future, how this can impact me for good and for good for the ones that I love. Right now I'm struggling. I know I need to set some firmer boundaries in some areas. And this is where, the communication styles you mentioned. You still have to let people close to you know what your needs are too, so that you will be in a good place with them. Okay. So, I tend to set these firm boundaries, but don't really necessarily always communicate why I'm doing that. And sometimes it might be helpful to people when you do that. Okay. And I digress. Okay. Yeah, and it says these should-could statements are often rooted in cultural expectations. Think about it. Your family expectations, your whether it's your family of origin or your nuclear family. And these can diminish self-esteem and raise anxiety levels. I'm almost done, I promise. We only got 2 more because I really want to at least say how you can challenge these. Okay, emotional reasoning. Okay. That's, you see people reactive. If I feel this way, it must be true. Your feelings are feelings. They can go away. They can change. Depends on how you talk to yourself about them. That's why you try not to be reactive. Because sometimes they can fool you. Researchers have found that emotional reasoning is a common cognitive distortion. It's a pattern of thinking that's used by people with or without anxiety or depression. Okay, instead of taking the time to listen and validate, we just put it out there. We judge somebody else by the way they're expressing their emotion. Instead of taking the time to, assess, explore, self-explore. Labeling. Oh, we know all about that. When I do not like to label people at all. Somebody's fat, that must mean they're lazy. Oh, come on. It's a million reasons why people struggle with weight. Hardly ever is it because they're lazy. If you don't see them exercising, it probably got to that point where they, physically almost just can't do anything. And then it certainly seems like laziness, but like I said, I hate to be assuming about people. I hate to be labeling about people, I'm certainly sad for people that are in a predicament where they've gotten to the kind of a point that might feel like a point of no return and hopelessness might set in. There's always hope. There's always hope. There's got to be, right? Be lifters of hope. Okay. When people label, they define themselves and others based on a single event or behavior. You have one one experience with a person. Like, let me tell you that lady, she was scowling at me at the beginning of the video. It turned out to be totally different. What if I assumed, she must be a Trump supporter. She must have saw my sign. I would have been wrong. Faulty thinking. I would have made a judgment of her that was false. So instead I said, okay, wait a minute. Her little dog wants to play. Let me walk over here. Maybe I'm trying to find out what this woman's about. Maybe we have something in common. You never know. Right? Okay. Yeah, this misperception of labeling people can cause real problems between people because nobody wants to be labeled. And here's the steps. First thing is you identify the thought that's causing your anxiety or dampening your mood. Okay? Just identify it. I'm feeling down. Remember I told you this is what I did with myself? After I came back and I realized what was happening, how I felt just bombarded by, I'm sorry, y'all. I have cataract lenses in my eyes, but unfortunately, can't take them out once they're in, and it didn't work out for me. So I still have a lot of eye irritation. We've tried everything. We put ducks in my eyes. What do they call them? Ducks? No, those are tear ducts. Plugs. I tell you, I misspeak. Oh, well. Anyway, and I was highly allergic to them. I'm like, oh, my God, it's supposed to be helping. This is like a million times worse. Oh, well. It's got one of those bodies, I've got redhead. Remember, I can feel a lot more pain. Okay. Try reframing the situation. Oh, reframing. Oh, my gosh, that's huge. It's another thing we got to talk about. Look for the shades of gray. Alternative explanations, objective evidence, positive interpretations. See, there you go. These are great. This is great stuff, y'all. Write down your original thought. Okay, first write that down, and then write 3 or 4 alternative interpretations. That would be really cool to do. I think I've done it before. And I know we've had to do these exercises in our classes. Okay. People usually repeat behaviors that deliver some benefit. Okay, so these behaviors that help you cope in the past, but they're no longer productive. That's okay. Don't beat yourself up over it. I don't care what it is. Overeating, overspending. I don't know what I don't care. Look, in my case, I was promiscuous. What if I couldn't let that go? What if I determined that I was unworthy and not, couldn't have the love of my life and, love in my life again because of that? What a way that would be for me to live when that was all brought about by sexual abuse against me and my identity being, shattered. Courage to heal. Okay, then they said, oh, here it comes. Consider CBT. That's what I did for my complex PTSD, y'all. Oh, my God. Wonderful. Make sure your therapist gives you assignments and work. Do the work. Do the work. It's worth it. Don't go just to vent. I mean, I know that sounds harsh. You definitely want to tell your story. You definitely want to share. But when you see your therapist trying to move you forward, trust that therapist. Unless your gut says, I don't really like this person. I can't relate to it all. But, there's usually a reason. They're trying to help you get unstuck. You want to get